It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's been so patient while I've been away. It's been a hard couple of weeks, but I'm back and I'm ready to do this. I was very fortunate. My father supported me in everything that I ever tried to do, including YouTube, and for that, I'm going to continue doing this and making sure that you guys all have that support from me to know about really terrific open source software. And I'm super excited. I've been contacted by a couple of open source projects who have asked me to do videos specifically about their projects, and I've got those coming up here later in July, so I'm really excited about that as well. So I hope you'll look forward to those things. Today's topic is NetBox. Now, I've been asked to do this one by several viewers over the years, and I've just kind of put it off because I was trying to really wrap my head around what it's used for and how useful it is. And as I've grown my network, I'm starting to understand why NetBox is so useful. So before we get into it, I want to tell you what it is. NetBox is a network management system, or well, let's call it a network design system. It is not for network monitoring. It is not for DNS. It is not for radius. It is not for any of those things. It's really for a network engineer or a developer to say, I have a complicated network and I want to lay that out and I want to understand and I want to assign and I want to be sure exactly where everything is in my network and what's assigned. So it's got IP management. It's got so many different things just built into it. So this is the documentation. We're going to talk about the documentation a little bit. We'll look over at their GitHub for Docker Compose because you can run this in Docker, which I love. You do not have to. There are other ways to run it, and they tell you how to run it and what you need. So right here it says you're going to need PostgreSQL, you're going to need Redis, you're going to need several other things in order to run this. An HTTP server, you know, if you want to use LDAP, it has LDAP authentication, but it's not required. It uses some GUnicorns to run some things as well, so I think there's some Go going on in the background there. And then the NetBox components themselves, so you can go and run this just straight up on a server. I'll leave that to somebody like Scott over at Scotti-BYTE who likes to run things more in like LXC containers to jump on that if he wants to. I think it's really cool, and I think as an ex-network engineer and IT administrator, he would kind of love some software like this himself. So definitely a really cool system. A really great system that I'm going to show you guys now. If you're just doing a home network and you only have 20 or 30 devices, NetBox is going to be extreme overkill for your needs, most likely. But as we start to move forward into the future, we're seeing that everything we buy these days has some kind of connectivity to the internet. You have IoT devices that everything connects to the internet somehow, right? You have light bulbs and switches and refrigerators and toasters and washers and dishwashers, and just everything you have connects to the internet, and that stuff is all going through your home network these days. So you really need better routers than we used to have. So that's where things like pfSense and OpenSense and OpenWRT and DDWRT come into play, because they can actually handle that kind of traffic, and they have some really great features like VLANs. So using VLANs and really understanding how those work is going to become important as we move forward in time. So I'll be covering VLANs as well. If you're interested now, Scott has several videos where he's covered VLANs, and it's just terrific information, just absolutely incredible information. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. So when we start looking at something like NetBox, I want you to kind of understand what it's really for and what it lets you do. So especially if you're a network engineer, but even at home now, you can start kind of using something like NetBox to break down your network and understand what your devices are and where they are and which networks they're connecting to, what IP addresses they're getting. And you know, DHCP is great if you don't need to know the IP address of things, or you don't need those things to be static IP addresses. That's great. But when you're a network engineer, when you're somebody who has a home lab or a home lab setup, or maybe multiple machines that you're using for Pi holes or Pi zeros, or maybe you're using Raspberry Pi 4s to run several of your different Docker containers, you want those things to have a fixed IP address so that it doesn't change on you suddenly and nothing will connect. And especially that seems to only happen when you leave home and then suddenly you can't connect anything that you wanted to connect to back at home. So having those things set statically is important, and being able to track that information is great. I've been using spreadsheets. It's not the best way to do that. I mean, if it's a small setup, like I said, 10, 20 devices, that's probably fine. But as you get into more complexity where you have VLANs and things, you're going to want something like NetBox. So if you look at this, you get a lot of information here kind of on the dashboard, and this is just their demo site. So I'm going to show you their demo site first. And if you want to go to their demo site, the address is right here. I'll have a link in the description and in the show notes. And then you just log in with the username admin and the password admin. Now, it runs a little slow. They may have this running on a limited system, or they may just have a lot of people hitting it right now, kind of trying to test it out. But it's really cool. And DigitalOcean are the guys who came up with this. So DigitalOcean is one of my, they're not a sponsor, but I have a link that will get you free use of DigitalOcean for a couple of months, or $50 of credit or $100 of credit. And when you sign up and stick with it, then I get a credit, which, you know, it benefits both of us, because then I can run servers that I'm using to do these videos and show you guys things. So it's really kind of a benefit for everybody. I like DigitalOcean. I like what they have to offer. That's why I've used them, and that's why I have them as a link that gives credits there in the show notes and in the description. So if you want to get to that, definitely check the description for the links to that. But DigitalOcean came up with this because they realized we need a way to map out our network, because they have obviously a very complex network, and they have a network that's always changing and always getting more complex, and they want to know, if I call in and I say, well, here's my IP address, that they can go look that up very quickly and find where exactly is my server, my virtual server, my VPS, and they can, if they need to go do physical access, they can, or if they, you know, it just helps them figure out where things are and where problems might be at by mapping out their network really well. So if you look here, you've got organizations. So you have options for sites, regions, site groups, and locations. So if we just check out locations here, let's go see what that looks like. Now, it takes just a second. Like I said, it's running a little bit slow on their system. We'll install this ourselves, but I'm not going to have all the test data that they've got. They've got tons of test data here. So if we look at locations, they have row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. I'm sure this is talking about server rack rows inside of their facilities. So really cool. If we go back up to site, where that looks more like a top level thing, and we click on it, again, it's loading, so we'll give it just a second to load up. But we can see like what's going on with their hierarchy and with their organization. So we're going to click on this, we're going to let sites load up, and look at this. I mean, look at all the sites that they've got. So they've got DM in Birmingham. Let's just click on that. I'm sure that may be Birmingham over in the UK, that may be Birmingham in Alabama in the United States, I don't know. Yeah, United States. So North America, United States. So they can get some really great information on where their stuff is at. Now, again, in a home network, you may not need all of this. Your one site might be home, but let's say that you're the guy who actually learns how to do a lot of this stuff, and now your family says, man, I wish I had better organization on my network, or, you know, I've got so much stuff on my network, I don't know what's going on, or your parents call and say, we don't know why our Wi-Fi is not working well. You can start setting up those sites, and you can start mapping out what they've got, and guess what? As you map this out, while it is not there for setting up your network and saying, here, go make this my network, what you can do is export this out to other tools to use the information to set up the network the way that you want. So you could say, you know what? I'm going to map out your network. I'm going to look at it. Then I'm going to try to fix it. I'm going to kind of change things around, and then you could export that out and say, I'm going to set you up with OpenSense or pfSense or some other tool, and we're going to use that to get your network set up in a really great way. So there's a lot of power behind something like NetBox, even for a home user. And this is open source software. This is Apache 2 licensed, so that's really awesome that these guys are making this available. You can run it again in Docker and Docker Compose, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to get it set up running in Docker and Docker Compose. Now, again, it won't have all this test data, so I say, if you want to check it out and just go see what they've got, definitely go and look at what they have out here online, because you're going to want to see that. And again, this is pulling out of databases. It could be on a really small VPS that they're running just to let people see what it's like, so they're not using up resources they could be selling to people. It could be that a lot of people are hitting this at once. You know, the speed thing isn't overly important, but if you look here, you can kind of click on these different tabs to kind of see different information. But if we go down, now we have this option that says racks. So if we click on racks, it's going to open up and kind of load up the racks that we have. So you have all of these breakdowns of how things are, and it's kind of this hierarchy. And I believe some of this is set, but some of this you can kind of generate yourself to have a better hierarchy. So they've got these racks. So they have this thing called the comms closet, and you can kind of see what the racks look like. So this is their communications closet. If we scroll down, they've got rooms. They've got rooms listed for where different things are at, which is great. So if you're a network engineer at a college or university or at a business or anything like that where you've got things spread all over the place, again, you start to get this nice layout of where things are and what's going on. Now, if you look at this search up here, so let's just say room 305. So I jump in here and I'm like, okay, well, I want R305. Let's hit enter. Let's just see what we get. So this is going to search all objects. Now, if you just want to search on this page, they have a search right here that would just filter this table. But we're going to search on all objects and kind of see how it goes. There it is, room 305. So I didn't even have to go and look through all that stuff to actually find this. I was able to just go here. I can click on it. I can get some more details now because it's going to dig in. So it's got layers upon layers upon layers of information. There's some really great stuff in here that just, it's going to make it really, really good for you. And if you look here, they've got the server rack and they've got the front. And they've got the back, and you can go through here and kind of check things out. So look here. They've got add a device, add a device. What's connected here on this rack? What's going on in this room 305 rack that I need to know about? So you can say add a device. Let's just click on it. Let's just see what happens. You can see all of the information that you can load up and put into these things. So it's going to take some configuration and some setup. But again, if you're a network engineer or you're a developer who needs this, this is an amazing tool. Look at the build out on this thing. So we talked about IP administration. So initially we're looking at organization. This is just getting things organized and setting up locations and things. But if you continue down the list, you'll see you have devices. So you can set specific devices up. You have connections, where you can go set up connections. You have your wireless, so you can set up information about your wireless systems. You have your IP address management, so super important. We've got virtualization. So if you have virtual machines or you're virtualizing things or you have virtualized networks, you can see this as well. So your VLANs and things like that can be really, really well scoped here. Power management. So if you have APCs and things like that, you've got this kind of set up here. And then they have others. So they even have other things that they don't really have a category for yet. So as this builds out, I mean, just think about how much this has got already in it and how much more it could get over time. I think this is just super great. Now, I cannot possibly go through everything in this system with you. There's no way. You guys definitely want to see how to set this up and install it yourselves. I have no doubt about that. If you've been watching this long, you're interested in getting this ready. So that's what I want to talk about next. So we're going to go over here to GitHub. They have some really great documentation. So I'm going to just go back here over to the code section. And again, I'll have this linked in the show notes and the description. They've got some pretty straightforward instructions down here for you to follow. So you're going to clone this thing. Step 1. Move into the folder once you've cloned it. Step 2. Now they want you to run this command. I'm not sure what this does other than it's got an override.yaml file that we'll look at whenever we get it cloned down first. And then they've got this kind of override of here's what we want. So we want to basically throw the override text into this file. So we're going to say, hey, put what's here into this file. We can just look at the file and we don't have to do that step, I don't think. Next, we're going to do Docker Compose pull, because it's going to pull everything down that we need, and then we'll do Docker Compose. Now, they say up. That's going to let you see all the logging as it goes. We'll just do up-d, and then we'll do a couple of ampersands, and then we'll do Docker Compose logs-f, so that it'll show us all the logs, but when we Control-C out of that, it won't kill the application. It'll be running as a daemon in the background. So we'll do it a little bit different than what they have here, but pretty good instructions and pretty easy for us to kind of look at. So they have container image tag information, so you'll kind of want to understand that as well. You'll see documentation. I mean, just so much great stuff. Getting help, looking at dependencies, updating. And then this tells you, hey, this is supported by the community, so please consider supporting the community members. So you kind of go look out and see who's working on this, see what they have. Make sure to give them a kudos. Make sure to give this thing a star if you like it. Make sure to get out there and give them, you know, any kind of monetary support that you can, if that's what you want to do. If you want to help by contributing and making sure that this thing continues to work well, do that as well. Again, issues list, so you can kind of see what they have right now for issues and see where those things fall. You can look at pull requests that people have done, so you can see like what have people done to try to improve this so far. So you can look, I mean, it's just so much great stuff on GitHub whenever you go look at it. So we're going to go back to the code page here for now, and we'll kind of start with the simple stuff, which is pull down the code and make a few changes inside of some of those code blocks. So let's do that first. Alright, so right here I've got my terminal that I've got set up, and I'm logged into my testing server that I've created. So I'm just going to go and cd into my Docker folder. So the way that I like to run is I have this Docker folder right here that keeps everything set up for me, and I keep all of my Docker stuff in there because it's easy to back up that single folder and compress it for my backups. So I'm going to just do cd docker, And if I do ls, you can see I've got a couple of things here that I'm messing with, so we'll kind of look at these later. Don't worry about it right now. But I'll clear that, and we're just going to go grab that command that they said, you know what, you need to clone this thing. So we're just going to grab this clone command right here, and we're going to go back to our terminal, and we're just going to paste that in, and we're going to hit enter. So that's going to pull that down. Now we can cd into NetBox Docker, and we can just do an ls and kind of see what's here. So right off the bat, we see there's a docker compose.yaml, a docker compose override.yaml.example, and a docker compose.test.yaml. So this little thing where they say, hey, next thing you want to do is run this thing, is to create this file that has these contents. So they want us to create a file that's called docker compose.override.yml, and they want it to have these contents. So what we can do is just look at what they already have actually in their example file. So we'll just do nano docker compose.override, and it's going to give us that example. So if we look, it already has what they said to put in there. So we don't actually need to go and do that other step unless you just want to. If you feel like it's faster, that's fine. But what we can do is just Control-C out. Now we want to make sure that we have 8000 open on our machine. If you don't, you can change that port. You can change this left side right here. The left side of the colon you can always change. The right side you do not want to mess with, but the left side you can change. So we're just going to Control-X out of that, and we're going to clear that, and we're going to say cp docker compose.override, and that's .example, and we're going to change that to docker compose.override, and we're just going to take out the example part like that. So now we have a docker compose.override.yml file that's exactly what they said they want. The next step says do docker compose pull and then docker compose up. So we'll kind of do it their way, but you could just do docker compose up and it's going to pull down the stuff that you need. But we'll do it their way. It's fine. So we're going to do docker compose pull. So this is going to go out and pull down all of the different repositories that it needs. All right, that took about 30 seconds. It didn't take very long. Now the next thing they want us to do is docker compose up -d. But before we do that, I want to do an ls again, and I want to point out a file here, or a folder actually. So this folder called env, this is an important folder. So we're going to cd env, and we're going to look at this. So we have these things that are netbox.env, postgres.env, redis cache.env, and redis.env. So it's important that you understand that these are the environment variable files that are going to get used by the docker compose file. So we're going to say nano netbox.env. This is the most important one in my opinion. Now it's got a lot of stuff in here, and a lot of these things you don't need to change, but you might want to. So like, for instance, this email from, where it says netbox@bar.com. You might want this to be yourself, because if you're setting this up for an organization or for your home, you might want to be able to get emails for yourself. So you want to set up your email. I'll set mine up just like that. An email password. So you'd put in the email password for the email account that you just put. You want to put in the correct email port. So if yours is not, if you have TLS, you probably have 587. You might have 465 if it's SSL only. The email server on my case is not localhost, so I would put in my email server. And then your email SSL cert file, if you have SSL, you would put that here. I don't. Email timeout 5, that's fine. And then email username, again, is not NetBox. In my case, it's my full email address. So you need to know how to set up your email SMTP settings, but that's what they're looking for right here. So you might want to go through and set these and make sure everything's correct. Don't forget to put your password there. Okay. And then it says email use SSL and email use TLS are mutually exclusive, which means you can only use one or the other. You can't set both of them to true. So in my case, it's TLS. So I'm going to set this to true. And then GraphQL enabled or QML enabled, that's up to you guys. If you want to leave that enabled or not, I would say just leave it alone if you don't know what that is. And then we're just going to kind of scroll down here. Now they have some default things here. So they have this Redis cache password. This password, if you change it here, you need to go to that Redis cache.env file and change it there to be exactly the same. They need to match. If they don't match, it's not going to work. Again, with the Redis password, this is already set. you'll want to change this, or you may want to change this. Let me put it that way. But if you do, you need to go to the redis.env file and make sure you change the password there so that, again, that they match. So you have this super user API token. This is just a generic thing that they've set. You will probably want to change this. You don't want to have your API token be this, because then anybody could access your system using the domain and the API token that's here, this default. So you want to change this for sure. Make sure this is long, strong. Do not leave it like this. Your super user email, again, you'll probably want to change this to your actual email. So we'll just go here and we'll say, and right here, super user username is up to you if you want to leave that as admin, but I highly recommend changing the password to something else. You probably don't want to leave this as admin. Make it something long and strong. Don't use what I just put on the screen, because that's still a weak password, but it's different from what it was at least. And then webhooks enabled true, you can leave that alone, that's fine. Once you're done, you can do Control-O and enter to save, and then Control-X to exit. Now, let's just look and see if I'm wrong about these other files. Nano redis.env. Yeah, so there's that password. Remember I said you have to make sure they match. You want to come in here and change this to match what you changed it to in the NetBox env file. And then the same way with the Redis cache password, make sure that you change that. And if you change the Postgres information, you want to change that stuff too. So you may have a few things you need to modify here in these env files before you move forward. It's very important for you to understand that this is something that can really cost you a lot if someone gets into your system because you did not change these defaults. So now that we've got those things changed and set, we can cd back to our other folder here. And now we can do the command docker -compose up-d, and then we're going to do && docker-compose logs-f. And what this will give us, instead of having to do docker compose up without the -d to see all the logging that happens when it's creating the actual system and starting up, so we can look for errors, is this creates it as a daemon in the background and keeps it running, but this will show us the logs, so that we can see that if there's any errors, we can hit Control-C to get out of the logs, and then we can do docker compose down to shut down everything and make any changes we need to, and then try again. So we're just going to hit enter. We're going to let this thing kind of go and try to start up. It's going to try to start up all these different containers, and it's going to start scrolling a bunch of stuff, and it'll take a few minutes potentially the first time you run it for sure to kind of get everything set up the way it needs to be. Alright, right here we see this line that says NetBox application started, and it says unit configuration loaded successfully. Great. So a lot of these things don't mean a lot to me, but if I see that, that gives me some hope that maybe this is running. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to open up a new tab here, and I'm going to go to the IP address of my server that I set this up on. And I'm going to go to port 8000. Let's just see if we get anything to load. Yeah, that loaded up pretty fast. Now, I'm not logged in. This shows me kind of the dashboard, but you see all these locks, all these padlocks. That's because I'm not logged in yet. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the login button here. That should take me to the login screen. So I'm going to type in admin, and I'm going to type in that horrible password that I put in it a while ago. And there we go. Now, you can see it's all zeros. This is why I did not want to do the installation first, because there's nothing in here. So really, this is a blank slate for you to start with, and understanding how all of this functions together is just, it's a series of videos, and it's not something that I can cover. But the good news is they have a YouTube channel with a whole series of videos on how to use NetBox and what you can do with it and things that you can get out of it and how it functions. And it's really, really a terrific series. I highly recommend you go and watch it. So I will have that linked in the show notes and in the description. Again, I just wanted to show you that you can install this and run this in your home lab. You can install this and run this in your place of business. You can install this and run this at your university. You can use this to your benefit. You can really build out that network and your understanding of how your network functions. And there's just so much to it that I can't go into all of it in this video, but I definitely recommend you go check out their videos, that you go check out their documentation, and that you see what you can do with it. And let me know what you're doing with it. I want to know what you're doing with it. But as a home lab user, I don't want you to feel like this is overkill for you. I want you to understand that this could be something that could really help you. And getting started now, if you're just beginning, might be the right time to do it. It may seem like it's kind of sparse at first, but as you grow into your home labbing, as you learn more about networking, as your network grows, as your device numbers grow, as your Internet of Things grows, a tool like this is going to become completely useful for you. I guarantee you that this will be a tool that you will use and depend on, and it will make your life much, much easier if you get it set up and get started. Even if you have a complex network already, there's no reason not to jump in and start using something like NetBox. I really like it. I think it's great. Again, DigitalOcean are the ones who came up with it and who created it and who are making it. So the way you support them is by going out and getting a DigitalOcean account and setting up a VPS and paying them $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever you need to use. Now, again, in the description, I have a link that will give you a $50 credit, I believe, for a couple of months to test out the VPS stuff. Their stuff is awesome. I really love it. I use it for a lot of things. You guys have seen it on my other videos when I use it. I think it's terrific, so that's why I like to have them in there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.